Good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the CrossWORD CYBERSECURITY PLC Interim Results Investor Presentation. Throughout this presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Please just simply type in your question and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it is appropriate to do so. These will be available via your Investor Meet company dashboard and will notify you by email when they're ready for your review. I'd also like to remind you that this presentation is being recorded. Before we begin, we would like to submit the following poll, and if you'd give that your kind attention, we would be most grateful. And I'd now like to hand over to Mary Dowd, CFO from CrossWORD CyberSecurity. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mark. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm going to get straight into the presentation. I'll just give an overview of the company for those of you who are newish to CrossWORD, and then we'll get into some more detail. So CrossWORD is an AIM-listed British business commercializing knowledge developed in universities into cybersecurity products and services. We're aiming to have approximately 5 software as a service products by the end of 2022, and we offer bespoke cybersecurity consulting and consulting around our software as a service products. We are a senior experienced team. Sir Richard Dearlove is our chair. He's former head of MI6 and he's chair of the trustees of the University of London. The CEO and founder is Tom Ilube. He's chair of the RFU. He's a non-executive director of WPP PLC, the FTSE 100 advertising agency. He was previously a non-executive director of the BBC, and he's former Egg Bank CIO, Egg being the first online bank. He's ex-Goldman Sachs, PwC, and he's an advisory fellow of St. Anne's College and honorary fellow of Jesus College, Oxford. Jake Holloway is our Chief Product Officer. He's over 30 years experience in IT over a wide range of industries. I'm going to ask Stuart Jubb and Sean Arrowsmith, who are with me today, to introduce themselves. Stuart, would you like to start?
Yeah, thanks, Mary. So Stuart Jubb, I head up consulting. So I spent 9 years in the forces, and after the forces went into KPMG, where I was COO of a consulting team of 200 globally, and then worked in the defence and security sector. I joined CrossWORD in 2016, quite early on, to start a consulting business, which I'll tell you more about later.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sean Arrowsmith, Group Sales Director. I've got over 20 years experience in cybersecurity in a whole range of businesses, from startup software businesses, very small startups, through to large multinationals like Siemens. Prior to CrossWORD, I had a 10-year stint with a company called IRM, where I helped to grow revenue from 2 million to 10 million turnover. I was a board director by the end of my tenure and also an equity stakeholder. And we sold that business to a French company called Altran in 2017. I then stayed on for a couple of years post-sale and joined CrossWORD in January 2020 to head up the sales area.
Thanks, Stuart and Sean. And I'm Mary Dowd. I'm the CFO. I'm a fellow of CIMA. My previous position before I started at CrossWORD in May 2018 was a COO of Cordium Consulting Group, a leading provider of governance, risk and compliance services to the financial service industry in the main. So what have we been doing so far this year? So our H1 results, we had total revenue increase of 22% to £825,000. Within that, our product and consulting revenue increased by 30%. And there's a difference there between the 30% and the 22% as we stepped away from software development services. Our consulting recurring revenue increased by more than 85% in the same period of the prior year. Total comprehensive loss for the 6 months was 1.5 million, and this was an increase of 153k over the same period in the prior year. The primary reason for that increase was additional overheads, particularly in legal and professional fees, as a result of corporate activities such as our fundraise in February, the acquisition that we made in the first half of the year, and the share split. We completed a 1.6 million equity fundraise at a price of £2.60, and that was in February. We completed a share split of 10-for-1 shares at our AGM in May, so that fundraise in new money was at 26 pence per share. We had new directors join the board. Tara Kemlin-Jones and Dr. Robert Coles joined as non-executive directors. And we acquired Verifiable Credentials Limited, which has a product called IdentiProof. So we added IdentiProof to our product portfolio in May. We launched Roziken to the 10,000 membership base of the Chartered Institute of Information Security. And we continued the rollout of Roziken with our membership body program to increase Roziken market penetration. This resulted in a 10-fold increase in the number of users of Roziken to reach approximately 300 and assessing over 4,000 suppliers, or nearly 4,000 suppliers. We started work with the University of Glasgow on privacy governance software initiative, and we launched the Innovate UK funded project, we call it Project Zeus, to investigate manufacturing supply chain risk with Liverpool John Moores University. That was a grant to CrossWord of £157,000. Our consulting division continued to grow in a range of high-profile sectors and to drive recurring revenue. As I mentioned, we added IdentiProof, taking our product portfolio to 3. The outlook for the rest of the year and beyond, so we're aiming to achieve the market expectation of 50% growth in our income for the whole of 2021. We're looking ahead, and the board is confident of delivering strong growth in the next financial year, 2022, taking income to 4 million. We're going to continue to roll out Roziken across the membership base of 2 more membership bodies where we have signed or are about to sign agreements. And we're targeting over 1,000 organizations using Roziken to assess over 10,000 suppliers by the end of 2022. We've commenced a pilot of Roziken with a global aerospace defense and security company that has over 6,000 suppliers. We're helping clients understand the credential stuffing problem and to help them solve it proportionately with maximum automation using Nixa CyberML. We're going to complete our cybersecurity product portfolio with the development and our acquisition of 2 more products by the end of next year. We're going to launch CrossWord into Oman, but before the end of this year, in partnership with the Harvey Holdings group. We completed the acquisition of Sega UK Limited, a recurring revenue threat intelligence and monitoring company, in August 21, and that service is going to sit alongside our consulting services. We raised a further 5 million at 30 pence per share in July, and we're taking IdentiProof, our 3rd product, to market, as well as continuing product development. So this slide shows a summary of our products and services, and we'll get into these in a little bit more detail. Roziken, our first product to market, is an enterprise-class third-party risk assurance product, which originated from City University of London. Nixa CyberML is a machine learning-based application protection. And IdentiProof, the product that we acquired through Verifiable Credentials Limited, which we acquired in May this year, is a verifiable credentials compatible middleware and wallet technology. Consulting services, we offer cybersecurity consulting services and threat intelligence services. I've included CyberOwl and BizGen on this slide, although they're not core parts of CrossWord. I just wanted to demonstrate that if we come across technology that we believe is good but doesn't fit under the CrossWord umbrella, we're able to bring these products to market. CyberOwl has a product which came out of Coventry University, and Coventry wanted a stake in the product which didn't fit with our model. So we helped to set CyberOwl up, and we provided them with paid for software development services. And for helping to set it up, we received sweet equity, and we currently own 4% of CyberOwl. BizGen had another product which we thought was quite good, but was geared towards the defense industry, which wasn't a core target market for CrossWord. So we helped roll BizGen out, and we have a license agreement with BizGen. And again, we provided software development services to BizGen, but we've actually just stopped doing that now. This slide shows a little bit about the cybersecurity market, and it's something we could talk about for a long time. And on the left-hand side, I've just listed some of the issues within the cybersecurity market. And while discretionary expenditure has been cut back by many organisations, there are still aspects of cybersecurity that are not considered discretionary, and investment continues in these areas. We're seeing some big names having data breaches such as Marriott, Twitter and Zoom. And we see that the UK cybersecurity market has been valued at over $7 billion and is regarded as the largest cybersecurity market in Europe. And that was assessed by the International Trade Administration in April this year. 4 in 10 businesses and a quarter of charities report having cybersecurity breaches or attacks in the last 12 months. And that's according to the Department of Culture, Media and Sport survey, which was issued in March this year. Microsoft has recently warned its customers of a widespread credential phishing campaign. And SolarWinds, which provides software to US governments and departments and many US companies, has had an attack which demonstrates the severe impact of software supply chain attacks. And it has reported in April this year that dealing with this hack has cost them at least $18 million. I'm going to hand over to Sean now to have a look at our products in some more detail.
Thanks, Mary. Starting off with Roziken Assurance. Roziken is our flagship product that Mary's already alluded to. And Roziken is really designed to help customers drive efficiency and automation in how they go about assessing cyber risks in their supply chain. Traditionally, the way that companies were doing it were building quite large spreadsheets and sending them manually over email to their suppliers. But clearly that's not scalable and quickly becomes a cumbersome, non-manageable process. So what Roziken does is put it online in a centralized portal and allows companies to send assessments out to their supply chain at scale. And when the suppliers return the assessments and they've answered all the questions, it comes back into the portal. And then instantly Roziken will give a visual representation of risk that you can see on the left-hand side. So that's what we call our risk scorecard. And that's generated instantly the moment that the third-party supplier completes the assessment. It also allows companies to keep track of where suppliers are in terms of completing their assessments and manages the whole workflow. And then once the assessment has been received by the customer, they can then go and assess the answers that the supplier has given and ask for things like more evidence or question some of the answers by flagging answers. And there's that whole workflow of getting clarification and validation of responses within the software. So it brings everything together, drives automation. Some clients have said that it saved them up to 50% of their time in doing this task in terms of going out to their suppliers and evaluating cyber risk. We have 2 different versions of Roziken. We have Enterprise. Enterprise is, as it suggests, aimed at larger organizations that have quite substantial supply chains. So the example that Mary mentioned briefly earlier was a large defense contractor who has around 6,000 suppliers that they have to assess. And therefore they will be using this at scale and they'll take the Enterprise version. That's currently in pilot phase and looking to conclude that by the end of the year with a hopeful deal early in the new year. And they also have quite a substantial user base of the product as well. So that's the other differentiator, the number of assessments, number of suppliers being assessed, plus the number of users. And they have about 30 in total across 3 business units. In July last year, we launched Roziken Pro. And Roziken Pro is 100% out-of-the-box functionality. So we don't do any bespoke configuration. And it's aimed at smaller sort of mid-cap organizations that will have a matter of 100 or 200 or 300 suppliers, and they want to drive some automation in the way they go out and assess that supplier base. They get the pre-configured assessments that we've built in the platform, and therefore they just have to use the content that's already native in the platform itself. And typically they would have under 5 people using the platform, and the sort of typical deal size is between 3 to 5K per annum on a recurring basis. So that's Roziken, main flagship product. In terms of where we are currently with Roziken, there's over 300 organizations now making use of Roziken, driven through various initiatives such as membership bodies that's mentioned here. We established a relationship through the CEO of the Chartered Institute of Information Security and provided a version 2 the 10,000 members, of which we got over 200 new users signed up using the platform. We have also been doing initiatives with ICAW, the Institute of Chartered Accountancy in England and Wales, and that is providing them with access to our modern slavery risk assessment that they can use to go out and look at their supply chain around modern slavery risk. And we are in quite far along in terms of discussions with a number of different bodies as well in the UK, one technical focused body and also one that's another industry body that we are in the process of putting in place our partnership agreements. We also sell through partners, so we have a couple of partners. One is Leonardo. Leonardo is a prime contractor for us in terms of going into very large bids that we're looking at in terms of MOD or defence. And Satisnet is a straight reseller, so they just resell our products into their customer base. And then NCC use Roziken as a way to deliver services into their customers. So they use it as a platform to provide services to their customers around supply chain risk. The JUICE, Project JUICE was the 157k Innovate grant funding that we got, and a study that we've been doing with Liverpool John Moores University about driving some more automation into the way that we manage supply chain risk. And we interviewed over 30 end user organizations in nuclear and automotive and manufacturing for the purpose of that research. It's been very well received and is just coming to its conclusion. And then also we have a partnership with IASME. And IASME is the sole provider accreditation body for the UK government Cyber Essentials programme. And they've launched 2 new certification programs alongside Cyber Essentials. One is to certify the Internet of Things, IoT devices, and the other is to look at counter fraud, particularly in the fintech space. And we're providing Roziken to 40 of their partners to use as the platform to deliver those certifications. So another great partner there. Customer base of Roziken is broad. It covers everything from local councils through to shipbuilders like Camel Laird, but we have a FTSE 250 chemical corporation in there. We have a fashion house as well that was a recent win, and so quite a broad range. Nuclear in Nuvia, and technology in Barrow McCann. So really, this sort of supplier risk is kind of universal across all sectors. So we have a very broad range of different sectors in terms of the customer base for Roziken. On to Nixa, and as Mary mentioned, this is looking at the problem that companies have with credential stuffing attacks, and she mentioned a statistic from Microsoft there about the credential stuffing attempts happening on Microsoft 0365 instances. So Nixa is really looking to address the problem when a major service gets breached and all of the usernames and passwords are compromised. They are then resold on the dark web to the hacker community, and the hackers will then take those username and credential combinations and will try them out on other popular sites or e-commerce sites, and they'll do that using automated tools to do that at scale. So they get their hands on millions and millions of username and password combinations, and they look to reuse those to gain access to people's accounts. And once they gain access to people's accounts, if it's e-commerce, for instance, they can look to defraud that individual, or just play havoc with the account and cause problems. But often they can use it to steal money, or if it's a loyalty scheme, they can steal loyalty points, and there's lots of different things that they achieve by doing that. Nixa sits within the web application itself and looks using machine learning for patterns that suggests that the actual service itself is subject to a credential stuffing attack, and then allows it to help organizations manage in an eloquent way how they deal with the credential stuffing attack. So you could do things like, if it sees evidence of a credential stuffing attack happening, it can turn on temporarily multi-factor authentication to add another layer of security to the website temporarily whilst they handle the attack and deal with it. And also, when they're trying to identify which are legitimate logins versus ones that have come from the attack, they're able to do that in a much smarter fashion which, if you have a huge number of user accounts, that is a really useful piece of functionality for customers to be able to use. Finally, the product that came through a recent acquisition is a product suite called Identiproof. This is based on the new W3C standard in what's called verifiable credentials. The use case here is very broad. So if you think about anything that's issued to you to prove that you are who you say you are, could be issued as a digital credential. One example there is in the professional certification space, when you get your license to practice for as an electrician from City Guilds or another organization that provides NVQs and things like that, you can then they can issue that as a digital credential, which then could be verified by the person that needs to verify it without revealing all of the underlying personal information. The other real sort of bonus around, or the benefit around the Identiproof platform is what's called self-sovereign identity as well. So, and you have selective disclosure. So if I get issued a credential, like a driving license, for instance, and I want to go and use that credential to present somewhere, but the only bits I need to provide is my photo and my name, I can just selectively disclose those two pieces of information, but they'll be verified by the verifier. So there's lots of different use cases. We're looking at things like concerts for tickets, insurance documentation, compliance standards. There's a huge number of use cases. My current focus is in the professional certification space, providing fraud-proof digital credentials for certifying bodies who provide those certifications. The CEO of that company was a gentleman called Professor David Chadwick, and David was one of the authors of this new W3C verifiable credential standard. So literally, a world-leading expert in identity management that's come out of the University of Kent. And that came out of some work that we were doing with an incubator program called the Cyber ASAP program, where we provide sales training on an annual basis, but it puts us in front of lots of innovation and interesting companies, and that was the route where this VCL relationship started. We actually helped VCL start to go to market early on post that training, and then we completed the acquisition in May. So Identiproof is now our third product in the portfolio, and we are working through our go-to-market strategy at the moment to drive revenue into that area. We've got a few good active conversations already happening. We're currently working on some potential pilots of that technology with a global training provider who issues over 750,000 certificates per year. We're also talking to the professional certification bodies or professional institutions where we've driven marketing initiatives with, and they provide professional certification as well. So we're sending them through. And that's Identiproof. Right, over to Stuart on consulting.
Thanks, Sean. So I'll give a quick overview of consulting and the Oman business. So just a reminder, now with the acquisition of Sega, we provide a full suite of consulting services across the whole cybersecurity lifecycle. We've got a high quality team of ex-Big Four consultants, ex-blue chip system integrators or managed service providers. We're strategic to our product business, so we provide market insights to help with the product roadmap. We provide consulting support to product integration, and also there's the cross-pollination of clients between consulting and product. We've got a CREST accredited penetration testing team, and we've got multiple Roziken-driven third-party assurance consulting opportunities, and we've got a very strong third-party assurance consulting team. We're very interested in recurring revenue, so we launched our virtual CISO services in 2019, and this continues to expand. This will be enhanced through the acquisition of Sega, which I'll come on to shortly. And we've worked with over 75 clients to date, although that number's probably gone up now, across multiple sectors, including insurance, professional services, financial services, nuclear, and technology, to name but a few. And we're working with one of the largest global S&P 500 insurance brokers, and we've got several FTSE 250 company clients. As I mentioned about the recurring revenue, in 2020 we were able to grow recurring revenue, increasing it to 2.5 times compared to what it was in 2019. And now that the consulting team has reached critical mass, we'll be focusing on margin growth in addition to revenue growth this year and next year. Okay, so just on the acquisition of Sega, so we acquired Sega in August this year. They're a UK-based threat intelligence and monitoring company. The total price was 1.8 million in a mixture of cash and shares, 1.35 million payable initially, and 0.45 million conditional on performance. Payments are upfront, deferred, and earn out. So just to clarify, that the 1.35 million wasn't paid upfront, but some of that will be deferred. And the price is a revenue multiplier of 2.25 on the unconditional payment. And Stega brings the additional capability of threat intelligence and monitoring services using their sophisticated in-house platform. They also bring 30 new clients to CrossWord, primarily in the financial services sector, taking the total number of fee-paying consulting clients to over 100. And naturally, we're trying to cross-sell our initial consulting services into the Stega clients and vice versa with Stega, trying to sell Stega into the consulting client base. Companies currently break even with 75% recurring revenue. And as I mentioned, cross-selling opportunities are being explored, as well as some of the operating synergies. Okay, just briefly on Oman. So we decided to open an office in Oman due to the long-standing partnership between the Omani and UK governments, and also because CrossWord management have some long-term deep relationships in Oman at a senior level. However, we're not solely focused on Oman, and we are looking at the wider group in general. We signed an MOU to partner with the Al Rawahi Group, a prominent Omani family, and we'll be establishing a subsidiary in Oman, and that will act as our Gulf region HQ. CrossWord will be the majority shareholder, and the Al Rawahi Group will provide startup capital, shared facilities, local knowledge and relationships. And we've already started working in the area out of London. So we conducted a successful consulting project with Sultan Qaboos University in late 2020. So we've got a foothold. And we also have a signed MOU within a major Omani managed service provider to agree a rollout of Roziken in Oman later this year. And I'll now hand you back to Mary.
Thanks, Stuart. So I'm just going to give a brief plotted history of CrossWord. So we were founded in March 2014 by Tom Alube, and we were admitted to AIM in December 2018. In September 2019, we launched version 2 of Roziken Enterprise, and within 6 weeks of that launch, we'd signed up a FTSE 250 chemical company, really validating for us that this is an enterprise product. In November 2019, we released Nixa CyberML. And in May 21, we acquired Verifiable Credentials Limited and added Identity Proof to our product portfolio. In August this year, we acquired Stega, the threat intelligence company. We have total staff of approximately 60. We have 2 offices, one in London and one in Krakow, where our software developers sit. And we've engaged with over 40 universities. We have a strong track record of revenue growth. Just moving on to our numbers. I'm trying to get this onto full screen so I can see it. Struggling with that. So our revenue of 825k for the 6 months. We had a positive gross margin. We had a loss of 1.5 million, as I've said, and that was primarily due to the increase in administrative expenses due to overheads, legal and professional fees, primarily due to our corporate activity. The non-controlling interest at the bottom of the P&L there in the current year is due to Stuart, who has a 10% ownership of our consulting business. Looking at our balance sheet, we've got a new intangible assets line in the current 6 months reported, and this is as a result of the acquisition of Verifiable Credentials Limited. The right-to-use assets are our offices. At the end of June, we had £682,000 in the bank. And post-balance sheet events included a 5 million fundraise in July, an oversubscribed fundraise at 30p per share. We also acquired Sega in July, and at the end of August, Sega in August, and at the end of August, we had 4.1 million cash in the bank. So that concludes the presentation. I think it demonstrates that we had a very successful first half to the year, and we've actually achieved many things since that first half, and are continuing to take many projects through this year, and are confirming our 50% target in income growth for the year as well. So I'm going to take the presentation off the screen, and back to you, Mark.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed, Mary, Stuart and Sean, for updating investors this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. But just while the team take a few moments to review those questions submitted already, I'd like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your Investor Meet Company dashboard, and you will receive an email when they're ready for your review. I'd also like to remind you that your feedback, as ever, is important to the company, and immediately after this presentation has ended, we'll redirect you for the opportunity to provide feedback in order that the company can better understand your views and expectations. Obviously, Mary, Sean and Stuart, the investors had the ability to pre-submit questions ahead of today's event, and perhaps we could start off the Q&A with the first one. Really relating to around salary costs. Could you give an idea of the salary costs for those employed on a yearly basis?
So you'll probably notice from our December 20 accounts, the total salaries figure was 2.6 million. And we reported average number of employees at that time was 34. And our current number of employees is 60. So we're not actually releasing that particular number, but you can derive what it may be based on that. So we've had a lot of new staff joining, reflecting our revenue growth. We've seen lots of new members in our sales team and also in the consulting team, and some product developers as well. And we have taken on the staff at Verifiable Credentials. Professor David Chadwick and his team have joined, and also all of the Sega team have joined as well. So we're building up our teams like that.
Thank you very much indeed. The next question really relating to consultancy revenues, up 80% in total, but how much exactly are they?
In the 6 months to June, they were 585k. That was a growth of almost 20% in consulting revenue, and consulting revenue accounted for 72% of our revenue. We'll see a shift in how the revenue is made up as our software revenue is growing much faster than our consulting revenue. And as we step away from software development, we actually concluded our contract with BizGen just at the end of September. So we're not actually undertaking any further software development work. So we'll see the shift in how the revenue is structured as well as we move forward.
Thank you so much, Mary. And the final question that we received ahead of today's events is, can you explain further the heads of terms with Harvey Holdings, please?
I can't go into the specific details of the heads of terms, as they haven't been made public. However, what I can say is the Al Rawahi Group are a prominent Omani family. They operate a conglomerate throughout the Gulf and in the UK. They're in a number of sectors, so engineering, manufacturing, property, environmental services, and they've got good links throughout the Gulf regions. So it's pretty obvious what they will help us with. They'll give intros to senior government stakeholders, introductions to other prominent families throughout the Gulf, and some of the companies based throughout the Gulf. And I think most importantly, they'll give us that local market knowledge of how cyber is operating in the Gulf. And we're already using that to explore a number of opportunities, and they helped introduce us to our country manager, who will run the Oman office.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed. Well, look, that takes care of the pre-submitted questions. If I could hand back to you, Mary, maybe if I could, just to read out the questions that we've received from investors, even who it's from, and where appropriate to give you a response, and I'll pick up from you at the end. So back to you, if I may.
Thanks, Mark. So next question is, how do you compete against some of the bigger names in cybersecurity? So I think Stuart and Sean, you'll both have something to say on this. And does the size of our business make competing harder given the critical nature of the services you provide? Stuart, would you like to start?
Yeah, so in terms of consultancy, we'll be competing against the likes of the Big Four, the big systems integrators, and we're able to differentiate ourselves in a couple of ways. So firstly, we don't have the price tag of the Big Four because we don't have the overheads. We don't operate a partnership model. We're not cheap, but we are finding that in some of those FTSE 250 companies I mentioned, the big American insurance company, we're getting traction and in fact displacing some of the Big Four. The other thing that companies like about us is because we build software and we have the relationships with universities, we're quite innovative, so we can help them with some of the problems that are 3 or 4 years down the line. And then just lastly, because we've got more of a sort of startup culture and a more of a relaxed culture, we're able to attract people who've spent 5, 10, 20 years at the Big Four and want to work in a slightly more exciting company. You know, we take the values very seriously, and we try and have a very relaxed and good culture for the team as well.
Yeah, and just picking up on what Stuart just spoke about there, I think in terms of on the product side, it's the access to innovation and the model of bringing, you know, really deep university research or other research to bear in terms of the product. I also think that some of the big players in the cybersecurity market have a less personal touch in terms of the relationship as well. So I think we certainly compete very well in that respect, because companies can see that they're going to get a much closer attention to service from a business like ours. And then finally, you know, we are growing, and our market presence, particularly in the UK market, is really starting to expand. So more and more people are hearing about CROSSWORD, and they recognise us as a player in the market like anybody else.
Thank you both. Do you ever examine the Roziken results for the same supplier for different customers? Is it possible to then benchmark suppliers in a more general sense? I think this is a very interesting question and very topical. Our project Zeus is looking at all the complexities within the supply chain. And this is something that's been discussed quite a lot as part of that project. The project completed last month, and it was received, there was a lot of industry interaction as part of that project, particularly in the automotive and nuclear industries. And this is one of the things, it's not something we're actively doing at the moment, but it's something that may come out of that project. And we may see either a whole new product come out of that project Zeus, or there may be augmentations to Roziken, and this is a potential area for that as well. The next question is, re your acquisition of Sega, have you retained the key personnel, and is there further M&A on the horizon? So Stuart, do you want to talk to that?
Yeah, we've retained all key personnel, and so that, you know, they came over, and the former CEO of Sega is incentivized for the long term as part of the acquisition. And as we've mentioned a couple of times on the updates, we are looking at potential acquisitions. So Mary and I are scanning the market and looking for interesting companies. So there may well be, but I can't say too much more.
Thanks, Stuart. The next question, given current market mix, what is the break-even revenue number and timescales? So we expect our recent fundraisers this year to see us through to profitability based on our current structure. If we have an acquisition, we may need to come back to the market for that. We've said that we're going to achieve 50% revenue growth this year, and that we're targeting 4 million income next year. And we expect that profitability to happen within 3 years. So the revenue forecast isn't out as far as those 3 years, but you can assess based on those kind of revenue growth targets what that's likely to be. The next question is, has COVID-19 had a detrimental impact? Sean, would you like to address that? I think there's been some impact on, initially at least, on how the sales teams were reacted to and how things changed over the period.
Yeah, I think when we first went into lockdown, certainly there was things were put on hold because of the uncertainty. So there was a period, and I think this impacted consulting projects as well with Stuart, where customers just literally put things on hold for a few months. But then over time, we all started to adapt to the new way of working, and customers then and prospects also realized they couldn't just park these projects in, for an indeterminate amount of time. They had to actually continue to operate, so the projects had to happen, and we've seen it come back. As things start to open up a bit, we're still doing the same things we were doing in COVID in terms of selling over remote channels using Google Meet and online resources, and that doesn't appear to be changing an awful lot. So I'd say, there was a short-term kind of impact in terms of slowdown, but we're back up to kind of normal pace now.
Thanks, Sean. Please elaborate on the cost of sales line and how that is modelled in relation to revenue bookings, including recurring revenues. So the cost of sales line includes the cost of delivering the consulting revenue. So all of our consultants are charged into that line. And we also have our software development costs. A lot of those are charged in there as well. So this is actually a really interesting area, because we expect to be able to drive up our recurring revenues proportionally as our products, our SaaS products, become a higher proportion of our revenue. And also with consulting vCISO service growing, and Stuart has mentioned that that's becoming a higher proportion of the revenue, and I think it grew 80% in the 6 months this year over the previous 6 months. We also have Sega on board now, and 75% of their revenues are recurring. And as we launch more products and as we acquire more clients in our consulting division, we will see the opportunity to cross-sell. So our revenue metrics are really going to become very important to us, and a real driver for how we grow the business, for both recurring revenue and actually the actual cost. The impact on the cost of sales line will be relatively small for this kind of work, which is going to really benefit the bottom line. The next question, do you have a forecast of share price growth over, say, 1 to 5 years? Our CEO, Tom, has always said that he wants to grow a company worth £100 million. And that's kind of the forecast that's out in the market. And that's what we strive to do. And we hope to achieve that in the next kind of 3 years. You mentioned 25% of charities had been subject of cyber attacks. What take-up or interest has been shown by charities in Roziken? Sean, would you like to answer that?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's a sector that we've looked at. We actually presented Roziken to a group called the Charity Security Forum a couple of months ago, and there's been a couple of trial sign-ups from that sector as a result of that initiative. But that's really the only kind of targeting we've been doing on the charity sector at this stage. Not to say that we wouldn't, but so there's a small amount of interest generated out of that initiative.
Yes, and we have supplied Roziken at a nominal cost to a charity as well. It's a charity that helps individuals that have been victims of cybersecurity. So that's part of our CSR and ESG initiatives.
That's great. Mary, I might just jump in here, seeing as you've been so kind, and every question that's come through from investors, you, Sean and Stuart, have gladly taken on and responded to. So firstly, thank you to all those investors and to you guys for your responses. I know investor feedback is important to you, Mary, and I will shortly redirect investors to provide you with their thoughts and expectations. But before doing so, if I could just ask you for a few closing comments to wrap up with.
Yes, thank you very much, Mark. As I mentioned, it's been a really good first 6 months of the year. And we see this as a pivotal point for CrossWord. We're really gaining traction with Roziken. We've got our third product acquired, and we're aiming to have 2 more by the end of next year. Our consulting division is going from strength to strength. We are with the threat intelligence services now, is that they have another string to their bow. And we can see, as I mentioned, the opportunities for Crosswell and to really drive this business forward over the coming months and years.
That's great. Mary, Stuart, Sean, thank you so much for updating investors this afternoon. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as you'll now be automatically redirected for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of CrossWord CyberSecurity PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation. That now concludes today's session. Good afternoon to you all.